Rogers, welcome to Australian Musician.
Hello, good to see you.
Yeah. Tim, you're in many bands, UMI, Hard-Ons, Bamboos. When you put on your twin set, what does that outfit allow you to do that the others don't?
I guess the instrumentalists in the band, I don't really count myself as an instrumentalist in the band. I just have this sort of perfunctory rhythm guitar and sing. So much went into the different parts of the ensemble musically that the songs feel because when I bring a song to any of the acts that I play with, I don't dictate what anybody else should be playing. I can indicate the way I heard it, but it's pretty much just lyrics and chords. So I guess the acoustic instrumentation in the twin set, definitely Jen's violin is a huge part of the sound. Jeff Concy, our drummer, I only heard on this new record actually 2 or 3 songs with drums on them. And when I sent him the demos, Jeff came back with about 4 or 5 iterations of how he felt the drum patterns to be. And so there's drums all over the record. And that was the biggest surprise to me. I know what a player Jeff is, but he wanted the lyric sheets beside him at all the time so he could play knowing what the next verse was about and the mood and about the scansion of the lyrics. And that was a really big surprise. How it went instrumentally, as with the first record, was nothing I could have ever imagined, because my scope musically is quite narrow for not what I listen to, but what I can do instrumentally. And so I just beg great instrumentalists to play with me, and lucky enough that they actually listen to what I'm writing, and they just go to town on it. It's thrilling for me.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is the new album Tines of Stars Unfurled, and basically you've written a 2023 version of 1999's What Rhymes with Cars and Girls, a sequel of sorts. A question, I suppose, is why?
Why indeed? It began as just a writing exercise, mostly lyrically. Because there was a stage play theatre show of What Rhymes with Cars and Girls in 2015, and I was on stage for every performance as musical director and a little bit of acting. And so I'd hear these songs that I wrote at the age of 26, 27, 28, and I'd be hearing them back dozens of times a day in rehearsals and talking with the actors about what each song I felt meant. For example, a lot of lyrics in the original script were wrong, and my friend Aidan Fennessy, who wrote the play, was very funny moments between us, because he has said that he always loved the record, but I thought, imagine if I gave you the real lyrics, I wonder whether you'd like it even more. And so we had to go through that, making sure that it was all correct, and then hearing for 8 performances a week these songs sung by actors and beautiful voices, and as a writing exercise, I just thought, well, what about sequels or variations on the songs? And I had the opportunity on stage each night while the show was on to be doing that. My character in the play could be with a notepad for 70% of the show and listening to these songs and then thinking, I wonder how I'd write that as however old I was then, 48. So it was just a writing exercise, and then I shelved it for a couple of years, thinking, well, that was something to do during the performances. And then I called Jen Anderson, who she and I got the twin set together back in 1998. And I said, look, I've got this idea. I mean, what do you think about revisiting this thing? And because it felt quite unfinished, we did a short tour after the Cars and Girls record came out. It was 40 shows, but it was just in a very short amount of time. And she said, "Yeah, look, I'm up for it. Let's listen to what you've got." And then it all just steamrolled from there. And we got the producer Jimmy Marutis that we wanted, and Davey and Richie and Jeff Concy on drum. You know, we got the dream team together, and you know, it's been pretty dreamy. But again, your question, why? Yeah. There's so many times in music we have to ask ourselves why.
Although the titles of the songs are similar to the first album, the situations are quite different. 1999's Happy Anniversary is very different to the situation in 2023's A Quiet Anniversary. Life has changed.
Yeah, and oddly, it is my anniversary today. My partner, yeah, it was, I thought, again, just as an exercise, rather than make songs that were related to romance on the first record, let's not just think, here's more romance attached. Even thematically take them away from what they were initially, or if there was a song that was not quite romantic on the first record, let's write more tenderly about a similar subject and relate it somehow, because a lot of acquaintances of mine through the passages of time have become a bit more hardwired, and I and very opinionated, and I don't enjoy that part of growing up or getting older, not necessarily growing up, but I would like to feel at certain times that, or just generally, that you can become more malleable through experience, and rather than become fixed in your opinions on things, through experience and listening to other people's stories and seeing things, that any kind of bullishness you had about your opinions really just breaks down, because of just experiencing others' discomfort, pain, joys, and then people dying, how to deal with grief. So on that anniversary song, it was the anniversary of my father's death, and it just caught me out one night, and I thought that was would be a different experience to write about the anniversary of a death, and the stages of grief, and whether they're in fact stages, or grief is as malevolent as we all know it is, and it just slaps you around the face when you least expect it.
Yeah. There's a bit of a tradition in contemporary music with songwriters responding to other songwriters. Not a huge tradition, but there's, you know, Lynyrd Skynyrd's response to Neil Young. Paul Kelly wrote Sydney from a 727 in response to Jimmy Dale Gilmore's Dallas from a DC-9.
Yep.
I believe Ian Curtis from Joy Division wrote Love Will Tear Us Apart in response to Captain and Tennille's Love Will Keep Us Together. I guess you're a fan.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well,
wow, that's great.
It's not confirmed, but it was thought that he was going through a breakup, and he wasn't feeling very happy about the relationship. I guess you're a fan of that kind of song play and music history.
Not always, but it certainly intrigues me, because how deep songwriters go into crafting their songs, or how little people do that. It shocks me a little. It shocks me a lot how little I used to craft songs, and I just used to write them and throw them in, and was lucky enough to play in a great band that represented them far more than they deserve, possibly. So yeah, I mean, even Paul Anka, Did you write Hey Paula, and Hey Paul, and no, the Lynyrd Skynyrd ones is just so great, and I love the fact that Neil has played that with Lynyrd Skynyrd, if only the once. I didn't know the Jimmy Dale one because I love Jimmy Dale Gilmore, and I've never spoken to Paul about it, but we were listening to a lot of Jimmy Dale when we made the first Cars and Girls record, and I'd hear that song and go, oh, okay. And knowing that if someone would say that to Paul, he'd, hey man, you got that song, and he'd go, well, yeah. He's extremely honest about, but I do love that that's an approximate, that's it's a response to it. There's I'm pretty sure I do it all the time. I mean, there are elements of what I do that if not blatant rip-offs. I mean, the famous XTC one on a song of You Almost Called Mr. Milk, and people thought that we were ripping off Senses Working Overtime, but that was I'm a massive XTC fan, but I was that into what you and I were doing that I was just oblivious that the melody for that song is the melody for the middle eighth of Senses Working Overtime. I wasn't trying to slip one through on anybody. It was, but it wasn't coincidental. It was just that who knows what's going on. And from there, it's very possible that with the You and I record we're going to try and start this year, that there'll be 101 obscure Genesis references in there as I plundered through their enormous catalogue,
which they've just sold for hundreds of millions of dollars, I believe.
Yeah, look, it's interesting when you become fans of something, definitely of performers that you hadn't before. And I just completely wrote that band off. I guess starting to become aware of music in the early 80s, and just not even bothering with that catalogue. Steve Hackett and Peter Gabriel, and yeah, there's so much there, and I don't resent that. Even they went from being possibly the greatest progressive rock band there was, maybe, I'm not sure, into a pop band. Good on them, really. I don't resent anyone who's written that such a large swathe of brilliant stuff. And if they want to become a middle of the road pop band, then good luck to
them. Getting back to this album, you brought on Davey Lane and Squeezebox Wally and Sally Dasty from the original product, from the original project into this recording project. Was it important or essential to get back as many people as you could?
Yeah, pretty essential. We couldn't get Ian Kitney, the drummer for the Twin Set, back from Japan because just financially we couldn't make it work. He's with his family there in Japan, and it would have been weeks out here and work. And yeah, it becomes very budgetary in circumstances like that. Stewie Speed died, and recording to a large extent is a tribute to him, because that kind of destroyed us all for a very long time. And but to get Ed Bates in on pedal was a really, for example, with Ed, who's such an exquisite player and such an exquisite human, and I just didn't know if he enjoyed the first experience of making Cars and Girls with us. And so I phoned him, and he was gorgeous, and so I'll be there in a heartbeat. Sally, kind of similarly, when I told her what the song was about and how it related to the first song, she got quite emotional and said, well, it actually relates to my life now. A song, and not necessarily not talking about Sally's marriage and family, but certain parts of what one character sings in a very odd way were relatable to what Sally's had to go through in the past couple of years. All these coincidences and serendipities and confluences. There's been so many of them, Greg, which makes you it could spook us, but instead we choose to think, well, okay, we're doing this for the right reason then, because there was always an element of doubt about it. Like I said to you before, if I called Jen and said, look, I've got this idea about doing a sequel kind of record, and if she said, well, it's a bit churlish or it's a little bit too cute or pat, I just would have left it alone and moved on to something else and said, well, do you want to meet up for a cocktail instead, really? But those people wanted to come back and work with us was really important. And Jimmy Marutis, our producer, similarly, if he'd said, I don't think this is a great idea, we would have shelved it.
Yeah. You've played a few shows already. How are the songs scrubbing up live?
Well, when I've behaved myself, they're behaving well. They're difficult. Emotionally, some are very difficult to sing, and some are musically very difficult to play. So it's a challenge each night. I've got to learn to, on tour, I still at the age of 53 think, well, come on, this is a party. Come with us, whoever's within vicinity. We're musicians. We're not. This is celebration of life thing, and I exhaust myself. Unfortunately, I've got a very limited level of, I guess it's just strength and fortitude. So learning those lessons day by day, and so hopefully for the rest of the tour, I can keep that in mind, because the rest of the band's absolutely cooking with gas, and it's very exciting. And so our fearful leader just has to get a little less fearful.
Are you playing some guitar on the tour?
Yeah, I am. I think the acoustic guitar, for what I do, which again is quite limited, I have been told by a few producers and people I play with that it's the right hand, and the way that my right hand works, either in a twin set with Jeff or in You and I with Rusty, or that's where something happens. And I'm interested in that as a fan of rhythm guitarists, whether it's Chrissy Hind or Keith or whoever it is in a band. That relationship between the drummer and the rhythm guitarist is where I think a lot of excitement lies. The way that Steve Earle traditionally plays, whether it's with Will Rigby or Brady Blades, the way Emmy Lou also acts with Brady Blades, that's where the excitement is for me. And I think that if I can provide that, playing that, and at the moment it's 100% acoustic guitar, and I think it'll stay that way. Davey's got an interesting palette at the moment with the twin set, where he just plays electric, and it's really working, that and the violin and mandolin, and definitely with the double bass. We've got a good thing going now.
But what is your main acoustic guitar, and is there a story behind how you acquired it, or is it just a bog standard music store purchase?
I'm mostly playing a Maton at the moment. I also have a Guild Jumbo, and I think I bought the Guild Jumbos many years ago, 15, 16, 17, even more years ago. The Maton, I think similarly. I've got some things that I've acquired from friends, carpenters, and that I'm a little nervous about taking out. Equipment is hearing more and more stories about equipment getting harmed on flights and in transport and in transit. So no, I never wanted to get too precious about those instruments, because things do get bumped around. They're there to be played, and I guess the Crockenbacker electrics that I play with you and may play with the twin set later on in this tour, they're about the most sentimental. Well, they are the most sentimental instruments I have. They were made by Piers Crocker, and Piers gifted me with a new one that I'm just over the moon about. But 2 years ago, I was kind of forced to have to get them valued because things were looking pretty grim, and wasn't able to stick with my day job or of course, to and yeah, that was going to be difficult. Thankfully, just at the point I was about to start looking for a buyer, I got a bit of good fortune and managed to get through. Yeah, it's a bit of a fear, and I don't want to become too attached to instruments, but of course we do. And, yeah, geez, I'm giving you some long-winded answers. I do apologise, Greg, but it's just one of those days, really.
So where's Tim Rogers' happy place in 2023?
Well, writing songs, really. But much in the same way, I like where I live in the country, do a little bit of gardening for people and lawn mowing, and I'm pretty happy then. Really, 6 tins of a very perfunctory beer and listening to Grateful Dead Live 72 in Europe, or writing songs out in the back paddock. That's happy. I do love touring, but I'm not a very great traveller. You know, planes. I like driving, but planes I'm not too fond of, and so that adds a little bit of discomfort. So I think it's the writing songs, starting them, and getting in the studio and working on them. We just finished the new Hard-Ons record about a month and a half ago, and that was just 2 days in Sydney. Drove up there listening to Blackie's new songs and writing some lyrics for that. And that was just ecstatic. And I really did think, wow, I've had 2 of the most extraordinary recording experiences making this twin set record, which is real deep joy. And the Hard-Ons record similarly. And so I want to maintain that, you know, just keep the previous angst and real worry about where this leads you on a career in music. You know, this should be joyful, and even when it's very, very sad, and I'm drawn more to writing sad music. But the joy that can come from sorrow, where joy kills sorrow, to quote friends of mine, that's pretty much where it is.
Yeah. So the twin set have dates through to early April. Then what for the twin set?
Well, we've got more stuff later in the year. As most acts are having to do, you've really got to plan it down to it. Just financially, you want to look after everybody. You want to make sure everyone's safe and ready to play good shows and appreciate their good work. And so we've got a whole bunch of proposed dates in different states that we haven't played yet. But straight after the twin set tour, I go to Europe with the Hard-Ons. And I hope we start a new Bamboos record and a new You and I record in there somewhere. And You and I have got a couple of conceptual tours later on in the year, and they'll probably work with Twin Set and with the 6 million things that Davey's doing. There's a lot going on. I was I was planning on doing a little more viticulture out here where we live, with a local winemaker and getting a job with him. But damn, music's it's wrecking it all, I tells you.
Well, Tim Rogers, always a pleasure to catch up, and congratulations on the album. I think we can call it an ambitious project, and you've pulled it off. And Well done. And
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say so, Greg. I really do appreciate it. It's lovely to talk to you again, mate.
okay, see you, mate.
Bye-bye.